splints. So if you've been following along in this short series, we've kind of gone through the beginning phase when you get the shin splint, working on the soft tissue, the rest, the recovery that you do initially need, and then progressively getting into what's going to happen next with the stretching and the exercises to really start making sure that that shin splint never reoccurs again. So we're starting to address a lot of what we call single leg balance exercises, and now we're going to talk about getting a little bit more dynamic and looking at essentially plyometric exercises. So this is very different from most conventional ways of treating a shin splint, where the initial protocol, like we addressed already in part 1, is that ice, the rest, the soft tissue. But now it's also going a little bit more unconventional rather, and starting to introduce different types of exercises that you can work in, like we showed with the BOSU, the TRX, working on some things where we're talking about more functional, starting to recreate that run movement by utilizing what we have. Okay, so like I said, today we're going to go ahead and get a little bit more dynamic now in addressing the shin. So what we're going to start off with first is actually some plyometric exercises for squats, okay? So what is that? That's essentially squat jumps, all right? So what we're going to do is, if your shins are now kind of fully recovered, you're not experiencing that pain or discomfort, we want to start off, and we've been focusing on our squat, proper biomechanics as well to really help make sure that we're not overstressing or taxing the lower leg itself between the calf, the soleus, the peroneals, and the shin itself in terms of the anterior tibialis. What we're going to do first with our jump squat is we're going to come down into the squat, and then we're going to go up onto the toes. So essentially, that first exercise we had you do with shin splints was, toe walks and heel walks. So now what we're going to do is we're going to recreate that movement, but starting to get more dynamic here with some jump squats. So if that's feeling pretty good, you're going to come down and start getting reactive here and seeing how those ankles feel when doing a plyometric exercise like I just said. So then the next thing is to look at a split jump squat. It also could be seen as a split jump lunge. So you're going to come into your lunge stance. This again is something we've been focusing on in terms of essentially how that ankle is moving. So we're going to come here. We're going to first always start basic, guys. Start with some static squats. Make sure the shins, the calves, nothing's feeling overly tight that you don't need to go ahead and do, one of the other protocols we mentioned in part 1 or part 2. But you're going to go ahead, you're going to come down, just give me a few squats. If it's feeling pretty good, what you can do is start with like a little skip. So you'd be here, and then it's a simple skip, hitting that lunge again, a little skip, hitting that lunge again, a little skip, hitting that lunge again. Once that feels pretty good, and you really want to start getting into that movement a little bit more, we're going to add some jumping in. So what's going to happen is now we're going to come focusing driving straight up, and then hitting that lunge, focus driving straight up, and hitting that lunge. Each time really kind of allowing that ankle to kind of experience that impact after you've exploded out. Okay, so now we want to start getting a little bit more into single leg activities. So we're going to use the bench today to do just a simple step up, and then we're going to add a jump in with it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on essentially that single leg activity. So I'm going to have my right foot onto the step. It's a pretty decent height, at least 24 inches off the ground. If you're not used to doing this type of activity, start with something much lower, 12 to 18 inches off the floor. Get the movement down, because the other thing is too, when we talked about the shins, we want to make sure that our hip flexors are not engaging. We're not doing something biomechanically that's going to overstress our ankle when we go back to running. So from here, we're going to go ahead, get up onto that back foot. Notice that the calf is completely engaged. We're going to focus going straight up to the sky. As we do so, we are going to come up. We're going to bring our knee up to the chest. If you have to bring it here towards the bench for balance, that's totally fine. But we're going to come down, and then nice and easy, coming back up, and really focusing on some rapid firing patterns coming up and down. So if you feel like you have that movement down and you want to get, like I said, a little bit more dynamic, what you can do now is you can come up, hop when you're up on the bench, hop, and allow for that body to feel that motion happening. So again, it starts to recreate that run movement pattern in a high step up activity. Now there are a few other things we can do, but for those, we're going to turn it over to the TRX because now we can even get a little bit more dynamic. So by now you guys have seen that I like to incorporate a lot of different tools that we have access to, whether at home or at the gym. And one of them I really liked working with a lot is the TRX, mainly because when we look at stretch activities, we can go ahead and use the TRX as a way to use some resistance, but also we can enhance our balance. So like I mentioned, running is really a single leg sport. So we just did some stuff focusing on squats and lunges, kind of doing stuff that requires a stable surface, for the most part being the floor and a bench. Now we're going to start looking at getting a little bit more unstable and focusing on the balance to really allow for that foot ankle to really start to engage, which means your gastroc, your soleus, your peroneals, your tibialis anterior, everything including the plantar fascia are going to now have to start to work in order to maintain balance. So again, the first thing we want to do here, and I showed this in part 2 where we looked at the squat, now we're going to start looking more at the lunge. So for here, what we're going to do first, again, always get into your basic movement pattern, kind of recheck with your body, make sure that balance is key, you're not having any pain or discomfort at the foot or the ankle, because if you are, then a lot of the other exercises we're going to go into today are not going to be appropriate because you are experiencing pain. So just give a few warm-ups both sides. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into a balanced lunge with the TRX, okay? So what's going to happen is we're going to come here, arms at 90, my leg is lifted up, I'm going to come back, I'm going to fold into my lunge. Notice that I still hit that lunge perfectly, and then I'm going to come up, I'm going to come back down, and then I'm going to come back up just like so. So right there is a nice, easy, what we call balanced lunge. Now we're going to even get a little bit more dynamic, and we're going to go into a suspended lunge. And again, this is really meant for once that shin has, pretty much fully recovered. We're looking at exercises right now to really help with it not becoming reoccurring. Okay, so this is where we start really getting into the biomechanics and the strengthening of everything that goes into it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is what's called a TRX suspended lunge. Okay, so my TRX is hung at a 6.5 foot height. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that the foot cradles themselves line up with essentially the center of my calf. And we need to bring them down just a hair. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this video for this purposes, I'm going to actually show it with having my left foot suspended so you guys can kind of really see the whole entire picture. So what's going to happen is now I've overlapped the foot cradles a little bit. I'm going to come place my left foot into the TRX. I'm going to start to go ahead and get myself a little bit more oriented because balance is going to be massively key here. I'm going to hop out just a hair, get my balance, get my bearings, try to keep myself lined up with the anchor point, which is behind me. From here, do a couple where you're going into that lunge and then you're practicing coming out. So you're going into the lunge and then you're coming out of it. In this one, you're going to feel a lot of work being done in the shin, in the calf, in the ankle itself. So this is why this is like the ultimate exercise that you do when you're really fully recovered, but now we want to look at addressing not having that shin pain come back. Now, after you've given me kind of 10 on both sides, really executing some nice posture, try a couple where you're actually adding some jump into it. So from here, what's going to happen is now I'm going to come back, I do use my arms, I come up, I jump up, get my balance, come back, jump up, and then come back. So like I said, when you start doing the ones with the TRX, the whole lower leg is going to be taking a huge brunt of the exercise because it's going to be really working and challenging itself for balance, setting off a lot of neuromuscular firing patterns that will be happening. Okay, so guys, that's a taste of part 3 of understanding your shin splints, where now we really look at getting more kind of into dynamic, explosive exercises, really challenging the balance that's going on, looking at really getting that shin to not over-engage itself, when you're out there and running. As always, if you've liked this series, go ahead and leave some comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you've been implementing some of this stuff and it actually has been helping you in relieving some of that shin pain that you've been experiencing, again, let me know so I can just see how we're doing, because this is a different type of approach than our traditional way of doing things for shin splints. This now starts to become much more complicated in the sense of really starting to look at all the muscle firing patterns that go into it and how our foot strikes that ground and why that shin may become reoccurring. So like always, if you haven't gone ahead and subscribed to the channel, please do. It's a way for me to kind of just let me know that I'm hitting some key points with the stuff that I am sharing out here on the channel. And as always, give it a thumbs up, like some of the videos. And guys, if you have any personal questions regarding anything pertaining to shin splints, again, drop some comments down below. Let me know so I can be of some assistance, because, you know, we all want to stay kind of more healthier and happier, especially with all the circumstances that are going on right now. We're starting to really pay attention to our own healthcare a lot more. All right, guys, this is Dr. Heather, and this was part 3 of Understanding Your Shin Splints. Have a great day.